Heads up, we have a priority invitation for you to attend Summit at Sea 2026. This is where 2,500 visionaries go on a 4-day odyssey aboard Richard Branson's Virgin Voyages. I'm fortunate to be a keynote speaker on the ship, and this year it will be April 23rd to April 26th. We'll leave out of Miami, and there will be content, learning, connection. I've met some of the most incredible people at Summit at Sea, and I hope you check it out. Head to summit.co for all the information, and for your priority invite, head to summit.co/a/renegade. We'll link to that in the show notes. I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. Hello, everyone. It's been a minute since I've updated you on the year-long AI experiment that I'm conducting. Here we are at the end of Q1, well into Q2, and I have some results for you I'm excited to share. I had planned to update you sooner. I think the last time was like mid-January, but life has happened. There's been a pretty decent-sized curveball, and a personal variable has entered into the system and into the experiment that had significant and sustainable emotional and logistical and just cognitive load. So a lot of stress. And that is real life. And I figured, let's keep going. So we didn't pause the experiment. We've been collecting all the data. As a reminder, what we're doing with this human-machine collaboration, this AI experiment that's a year long, is I am setting out to prove whether or not, with intentional AI integration into our lives, we can actually increase our quality of life, not just become more productive. So can we become more human, right? And so the insights and patterns so far are really blowing my mind, and the ways I'm learning to use AI differently, which I will share in a minute. But as an indicator of kind of how I'm doing this, if you missed the first couple of episodes, daily, I'm taking high volume, qualitative and quantitative data of all aspects of my life and pulling it into our database and then working with AI to analyze it. This includes, hard, cold metrics like biometrics, everything from my Oura Ring to screen time to obviously sleep and even some financial data. And then the kind of warmer qualitative metrics are more psychological, more emotional, and this is I'm constantly feeding AI data daily. So I think I've had more than 3 million tokens. If anybody kind of knows in those terms, it's a lot of information. So what are we finding? What's happening? And like you, we all have stress in our lives. So you're parenting, you're maybe building companies, you're navigating your career, navigating the unknown. There's, nobody is exempt from stress load. So know that yes, up and under, there's plenty of that going on with this data, but that's real life. If you find yourself in a heightened emotional state, or you're psychologically just in a bit of a tornado, you can ask AI, what is real and what is it that I'm telling myself? Help me understand the difference, because you probably are self-aware enough to know, emotions are high in this moment, or I'm spinning. And literally just say, hey, what is real in this scenario and what versus what I'm telling myself? And ask me questions. And that has been a really cool use of AI being able to shorten that gap of you could go on for hours and just spin, or days, or a week potentially, right? Or it can help you level set, and it could take 5 minutes. And it's what is the value of not going down that rabbit hole? I love it. So just ask it, what is real here versus what I'm telling myself? Here are a few anecdotal takeaways that I was not expecting whatsoever, but I think they're kind of the coolest part. So my personal spending went down by 66% in January, and then that's sustained for the next couple of months with a delta of a couple of percentages. But this is from last year's averages. And I think it's because this is empowering because I've been tracking so much. And when you know you're tracking something, hi, Polly, and you're accountable even to yourself or to AI and a big data set that's going to be analyzed and you're going to be talking about, like, I think it's embarrassing, but I was more intentional, and time allocation and resourcefulness got better. So that shifted, and it resulted into removing a lot of budget line items that I didn't need. This is another thing. I started enjoying running more. And again, I kind of, for the first time in many years, I started doing it, for mental clarity, not for forcing myself to work out or go get healthy. Hi, Polly. But the push became a pull again. And I just found I'd look forward to it. So somehow that really clicked for me. And you got to go on runs too, huh? With me. You got to go on a run. This was random, but like the energy I spent on appearance and presentation. So I was tracking like how many days. I track how many days. Like, do I just let my hair dry curly and not do makeup versus the days where I'm actually maybe perform or need to feel like presentation days where I'm actually putting myself together more, some might say. And, on average, so I did not spend as much time doing those things, but I also saved about 8.5 hours just in January as I added it up on going through the motions of, getting ready like that. And it reduced daily friction and conserved energy, of course, right? Saved some time. I signed up for an improv class. So this was, part of this quality of life, AI, machine, human collaboration is, can I feel that zest again more? And between the experiment, the improv class, and a few other big things coming up, like I definitely am feeling that more, even among this heavy personal kind of, variable that had been happening. So that was fun. And it became a goal to inject more comedy into my keynote speeches, which I've been doing. So yay. I think my self-awareness has increased. AI has helped me realize that I find and source a lot of significance from feeling useful and helpful and needed. And that's basically outsourcing, which is a great thing to know, right? It's not a terrible thing. It can be a blessing and a curse, but you overdo that and you're going to need to recorrect, right? We want to make, that an intrinsic value that we can bring to ourselves, not necessarily outsourcing. And then I just put, an increase in curiosity and zest for my career. That was kind of the original reason why I'm doing this. Like, I'm excited. I want to entertain myself and learn more about AI, but like I had felt a little flat. So here we are. Got it. So as I continue on and I'm looking at daily ways to implement this into my life and also into my, keynote speech, to be honest, and help other people extract some of these takeaways, because I know it's not logical for everyone to be tracking all this data all the time. Although I have learned like to do some vibe coding and like learn different ways to play with this stuff. And I was up till 3 a.m. the other night willingly because I was so excited about this on a Saturday night. But what I'm learning is, I look at that delta between idea and action. And that's what we focus on here with the podcast and our guests. And the Renegade rules, the ways to go from idea to action, I see where AI can be implemented into every single one of them. I've done podcasts on all of the rules before. But for example, one of the rules is you don't give yourself an out. You put a mechanism into place that holds you accountable and forces you to push forward. It could be as simple as sending the text message, buying the plane ticket, having the critical conversation, scheduling the meeting. And with AI, like if you're in a spot where you haven't taken that first step, I did this the other day. There's this idea I've said I want to do it. I want to do it, I think. I should want to. And I have not taken the first step. And so I had to interview me and try to get to the bottom of what's going on here. Well, as the questions are coming in and I'm answering them, the net, I realize is I actually don't want to do that thing. I'm finally being honest with myself. So I want to do it, but I don't. So let's just stop. And the expense of me continuing that loop and wondering why I'm not doing it is because I wasn't being honest with myself. But imagine how much time that idea had rented space in my mind for free. And that's valuable real estate when that could be shifted to something else that I really do want to be doing. So I asked it to interview me and I was like, don't take any of my bullshit like excuses. Let's get to the bottom of this. Another thing that it can do, like if you're not sure what those very first small, don't give yourself an out moves could be, ask AI to help you. Arrive at 10 and then choose one. And if you don't like the first 10, keep going, another 10, and tell it what you don't like about it. And it's the tiniest thing, but that's the momentum we need, right? That's with action comes clarity. Mood follows action. So we'll get a dopamine release as soon as we take that very first step and we're kind of off to the races. We talk a lot about mental, physical, emotional awareness as a renegade rule. And what I love about AI is having it help you identify your blind spots, right? So, when you have an idea, what are you thinking? What's the self-talk? Is it good? Is it bad? Are you being positive, negative? It's not right or wrong. It's just data. Well, giving AI that data is helpful because now you have a third party, unbiased, very intelligent, and also empathetic entity that's going to help reflect what that means. It's going to read the data, right? So it's like, yeah, that becomes even more self-awareness. And I can't stress enough the value and use of it to help you regulate and respond versus react and maybe close that rumination cycle, make it a little shorter. There are times where I'll tell AI, I want support and solutions. I have a cousin, Dr. Roxanne, and she's very direct. And she's like, do you want solutions or do you want support? And sometimes it's both. So tell AI, what are you looking for? It'll give it to you. Okay, so I have a personal board of directors that I am responsible to deliver a report to each month. And so I'm going to actually share and read a little bit of my report to this personal board of directors. These are mentors primarily, but also OpenAI, Gemini, and Claude are all on my personal board of directors too. So Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, they cross-check all this information that I give them and each other. So that's been kind of a cool aspect to see the different points of view and their pros and cons. And I'd say, their strengths and their weaknesses of those three different models. Okay, so as I'm writing this report, end of January to my personal board of directors, I started to see some insights for sure, some patterns. And by the end of Q3, those patterns have become reinforced, if not strengthened, and new insights as well. One of the first patterns that I started to recognize, and this has continued to strengthen, is how the relationship between kind of stress moderation and the use of AI as a regulation tool. So we're able to take all of my stress metrics from my Oura Ring, right? Whether it's 0 minutes in a day or 15 or 2 hours. And that's made it all the way up to 6 hours a couple of times in this first quarter, which is not anything I had ever seen before. But we're able to take that and then also mirror it against every other metric and KPI that I'm tracking. So specifically, I dialed into AI use and volume. So you can actually export your data. Let's say you use ChatGPT. So you go into OpenAI, ChatGPT, and you can export your data that you have a full access to, and then re-import the specific versions that AI needs to be able to analyze. Not only your volume, your messages, your conversations, but also the words you're using and the types of conversations. And then start to categorize based on, are you using it for more like a vending machine, in business where you're getting quick answers? Are you using it for really strategic thinking in business? Are you using it for personal things, for emotional, like thinking through a relational situation? And so we did that. We categorized and we basically have all of this AI use in different buckets. And probably hard for you to kind of see my screen, but basically it was fascinating to see the, signal that, AI is supporting emotional regulation and judgment quality for me based on seeing when the usage and the types of usage that would go up, those spikes, coordinating with then the stress coming down. So that was like, is this an anomaly or is this a real thing? And I looked at it many different ways. And it really, AI shifted from a tool as an like active regulation tool into also a partner to help mitigate the spikes of stress going so high, or to keep them from going so high, or maybe keep them from stretching so long. So these situations help me kind of slow down and realize, okay, that emotional reactivity can be better managed when I bring AI into the picture and help me work through a situation, whether it's just a normal everyday work thing or it's an emotional kind of high-powered, high-octane nervous system response. And that to me, periods of increased AI use co-occurred with faster stress moderation. Without establishing, causality, it improved decision clarity. And I kind of knew that, but I didn't really grasp it till I started seeing the numbers. And there have been times where AI is slowing me down. And it literally says, hey, Joe, I'm going to slow you down here. And that's helping me actually mitigate risk of making a decision too quickly or responding to something without thinking through it better. And that also helps me need less recovery time if I'm creating less stress because of that ability to slow down and actually have sharper, better judgment. Able to make quicker decisions, clearer decisions. So this is one of the biggest takeaways because, we think of AI in a lot of different ways, but the more it learns who you are and your personality and your whole life, so it knows personal, professional, everything. As a parent, kind of about me, it has context to give me not only empathetic, guidance and that kind of support, which is very true, like emotional intelligence, but also extremely, relational, strategic advice, knowing who I am. And there have been times where I'll go on a run and I am just downloading and it's helping me think through a scenario or, getting ready to board a flight in an intense situation and asking for a game plan because I'm riding on very little sleep and I'm getting ready to go give a talk and I need that level set. So, or at 11 p.m., in a hotel room. So this was big. I think this is something we kind of know, but it's really cool to see the metrics showing, we can actually decrease our stress levels and or shorten them. And then we have to spend less time recovering. And that's shown too through sleep and HRV and a lot of different metrics. So after month 1, the data showed clearly that intentional AI integration may improve quality of life by reducing cognitive load, increasing agency, sharpening judgment, and shortening recovery from stress. And that's independent of productivity goals, right? Or productivity gains. Okay, so what else are we learning here? So I hadn't thought about it this way, but AI is such a great way to mirror back to you the cost of something, whether it's a scenario or a project or a relationship or a dynamic, whatever. And this became kind of like an aha for me to think about how time is allocated as well. So quantifying the true cost of real world scenarios is it can do that all day, every day. It's kind of like a P&L for a project or a relationship or a scenario. And that's not just profit and loss, but it's in terms of, obviously the qualitative and quantitative data that I'm giving AI now, it's able to see the cognitive load, the emotional load, the time constraint, right? And how fragmented I can become cognitively if I'm trying to manage a ton of other logistics that aren't I wasn't used to, or the metabolic cost it can actually calculate, as well as, of course, financial trade-offs and ROI of where that time and energy could be spent. So I hadn't really thought about it like this, but there came a point where I was consulting with AI. I had one more thing to fit into my day. It was already a packed day, and it looked like on paper it was going to be a 30-minute task. And it stopped me in my tracks and basically called me out and said, yeah, you think that's a 30-minute task. But if you look at the stem of where that's coming from, that task, that thing in your life, this is how expensive it's become, right? It could be that project or that scenario that, like, I'll show you over the last month how much time, energy, even metabolic cost you've had over that. So it's not just that thing anymore. It's tracking and able to tell you, okay, is this worth it to you? Because this is what you're giving up and this is the trade-off. And it was neat because you don't usually think of how expensive is something to me. You kind of know your time. You might be tracking finances, of course, but is it renting space in your head for free on loop and churn, and or are you doing a lot of things that you would like to do under a less optimized system because of that thing? So it's like, wow, that's so neat. We can evaluate these variables in our life and decide, okay, does that make sense? But when you're in it, it's hard to have perspective. It's like, oh, that's 30 minutes. I can do that. Wait a minute. Do you realize? So that was like really interesting. So certain roles, dynamics, and scenarios may be far more expensive than previously understood. Here's another pattern. So I thought this was cool, and I can totally co-sign on this one. So physical routines are psychological anchors for me, evidently. So exercise metrics became more stable during psychological strain. And I know that because I'll go on a run and think things through, or use it as a bit of a release, or, a walk, or go rucking. But physical movement appears to function as an identity anchor when cognitive resources are depleted, right? So that's kind of my home base. That's how I feel most at home. If I need to kind of get back to baseline and be rooted and grounded, I need some physical activity. I need to go out and get some movement. And energy actually increased with intentionally chosen challenges. So like creative, physical, skill-based, and it decreased with reactive strain, which makes sense. But AI consistently nudged decisions toward agency. So again, we're closing that loop. And I was thinking about this in terms of like journaling. I've been journaling since I was like 9 years old. Not every day, but pretty darn consistently. And sometimes when you journal, like you're ruminating, right? You're spinning and you're getting it out. But like, where are we going with this, right? Do you want support or solutions? And so with AI, when I take that medium and put it into AI, usually I'm talking to it voice to text, or you can just do voice direct. It's emotionally supportive, and it's very empathetic and emotionally intelligent. However, it is going to get me to a solution, right? Or to a next step. So it's almost like a force constraint. It closes that amount of time that I'm ruminating on something, and I'm on to the next step, right? With action comes clarity. So I'm out of my head, and it's now in the hands of, incredibly intelligent models. So that was kind of cool to realize. This has been one of my biggest lessons so far with this experiment, and it's turned into a huge life lesson for me, is that it's not always time that's the constraint, and I think it is. It's the cognitive load fragmentation, meaning, when I'm looping and I'm emotionally processing something and I'm not able to arrive at a understanding or a next step, that is so much more expensive to me in my optimization and my quality of life and my ability to perform as a mom or as a business person or just show up in life than just being strained on the clock, right? And a time scarcity. So the primary limiter so far that we're seeing for quality of life is decision fatigue, fragmented cognitive load, meaning you're constantly switching and you're not arriving at a solution. So when I can reduce rumination and restore more agency and like logical thinking, that's when my quality of life starts to go up. And I know this might sound obvious, but I think so many times I hear people and even myself, like, it's all a time thing, right? I can't get enough done. And it's not just that bandwidth. It's what's trapping us with our capacity. So that to me was kind of an interesting aha. It wasn't the most stressful times that weighed on me the most. It was the times where I wasn't able to figure out a solution or something was left unopen in my mind. So yeah, that was a takeaway. We'll wrap there. This is continuing to unfold. The amount of data and the analysis is just, it can be overwhelming, the ways to look at all these different components. But I'm continuing to do so. And we're seeing some really interesting correlations. So that's where we are now. Feel free to ask questions, send me a DM, send me an email, and we'll update you soon for month 4. So at the end of April.